The elderly black janitor of hotel owner Mock is oblivious Keanu Reeves is in the stall. Please let us know where you're watching from in the comments section, and remember to like, share, and subscribe for more motivational tales. You can also try to reach 1,000 subscribers. The poorly lit lavatory rear of fresh humiliation and disinfectant as Andrew Calhoun, an arrogant hotel owner, mocked the old janitor who was stumbling to the marble floor. Perhaps you ought to have retired with honor rather than cleaning toilets for peanuts. Behind the locked stall door, a silent person sat still, his jaw tensing as Andrew jeered. Unnoticed yet undeniably present, Keanu Reeves listened carefully to the sophisticated but elderly known for its extravagant facade. The Magnolia Grand Hotel on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan was rumored to have poor employee treatment. The establishment was run by 48-year-old Andrew Calhoun, a third-generation hotelier who had an iron fist and a cocky attitude. His workers were disposable cogs in his money-making machine rather than human beings, and one of those cogs was for more than 30 years. 64-year-old janitor Earl Washington had been employed at Magnolia Grand. Earl was a quiet, unassuming guy who had raised 3 kids on his meager income after losing his wife to illness in 2005. His sluggish gait and arthritic hands spoke eloquently about years of toil, yet even in the face of taunts, his eyes had a certain warmth. Earl was unaware that the man who would forever alter his life was seated in that bathroom stall. On a chilly December afternoon, Keanu Reeves, dressed simply in jeans and a leather jacket, entered Magnolia Grand's lobby undetected. He was in town filming a movie and had ducked in to use the restroom to avoid paparazzi, a man with modest habits. Keanu, his humble manner, concealed his fame in the bathroom as he blended in with the surroundings. Earl's shift was coming to an end. Andrew clapped loudly as he stormed in his $800 loafers, his mop squeaking against the marble tiles. When he heard Andrew's voice, Keanu, who was already inside one of the stalls, froze. "Earl, you are the slowest freaking janitor I've ever seen. Do you even try, or are you simply waiting to croak and save us the trouble?" Andrew spat, and his words reverberated off the immaculate walls in a tone of contempt. As Andrew went on, Keanu tensed his Hollywood trained tolerance, saying, "You're lucky I didn't fire you and replace you with one of those cleaning robots because it had cost me less and done a better job." Andrew sneered, laughed, and crunched his fists against the sink as Earl cleaned quietly. Earl didn't answer, instead focusing on his work with trembling hands. "I guess people like you never do, which is why you'll always be at the bottom." Andrew wanted to step in, but something told him to wait. Keanu wasn't just any bystander. Everyone knew him as an actor, but few knew about his charitable streak or his unwavering advocacy for human dignity. Andrew didn't realize that Keanu had a past that made him especially sensitive to injustice. Hearing Earl's humiliation brought back memories of his own hardships, years of loss, pain, and perseverance. At last, Earl said in a quiet but calm voice, "You can make fun of me all you want, Mr. Calhoun, but at least I've lived a decent life, which is something your money can never buy you." Andrew's cheeks reddened with rage and dignity. "What do you know about decency, old man? You're nothing more than a relic," he growled. When the restroom door suddenly opened and a young bellhop, Mr. Calhoun, trembled in and stammered, "The press is here for your statement about the incident last night," Andrew swore under his breath and scurried out, leaving Earl and his mop behind. Earl looked up, startled, and almost dropped his mop. "A relic cleaning up after people like me inside the stall." Keanu's mind raced. He had the power to change this right here, right now. Mr. Reeves stumbled and whispered, "Keanu," smiling softly and calling me by name. "Are you okay?" he asked, holding out his hand. After hesitating, Earl shook his hand, overcome by the compassion in Keanu's eyes. "I'll be all right. It's nothing new," but as they spoke, something sinister was simmering somewhere else in the hotel. Andrew Calhoun had dark secrets that he believed were buried deep, but he had no idea that Keanu's presence would reveal them all. Earl Washington's gnarled hands trembled as he clutched his mop, uncertain if he had imagined the kind gesture Keanu Reeves made. The actor's voice was a mixture of amazement and disbelief. The actor grinned warmly. Earl's lips tightened into a faint smile, but he didn't reply because years of abuse had taught him that no one truly cared. His presence was a sharp contrast to the venom Andrew had left hanging in the air. "You shouldn't have to deal with that," Keanu said quietly, his dark eyes full of compassion. Sensing the quiet, Keanu looked at the bucket and mop next to Earl 30 years ago and inquired softly. When Earl nodded began in 1987, this location had personality. Now, it's just marble and shadows. While Earl was speaking, Keanu saw flashbacks of his own life, recalling being 23 years old, working odd jobs while living out of suitcases, and the numerous strangers who had once shown him kindness in his darkest moments. His voice faltered, but he persisted, saying, "They forget the ones who keep the lights on folks like Andrew. They've never had to earn anything." He felt a surge of guilt. He had the power to act, but what would that look like here? "I've met people like Andrew before who build their lives on other people's backs, but you're still standing. That says something," Earl Keanu remarked at the end. "It gets tougher every day, Mr. Reeves, and occasionally I wonder if it's all been worth it." Earl chuckled dryly, a sound more bitter than amused. "Standing perhaps, but for how long?" He pointed to his sore knees and sighed. "What about your family?" he questioned softly, and that statement hit Keanu like a punch. Earl's face made me feel better about my kids, who are the reason I continue to live. 3 of them, including my youngest daughter Dion, recently graduated from college. My wife Maggie constantly assured me that we would see the kids through to a brighter future. Before she could witness it, he paused and cracked his voice. Keanu inhaled deeply, attempting to suppress his feelings so she would be pleased. "Look at what you have done for them, Earl." Earl nodded but remained silent as the faint sounds of holiday music filled the lobby. The contrast between the cozy exterior and the harsh, frigid reality within the restroom was intolerable. Breaking the quiet, Keanu stated. Earl blinked, taking a back seat. "But you don't have to do that," Keanu grinned. "I want to," Earl hesitated, but then nodded. "Okay, but only if it's a diner. I'm staying in town for a few weeks, so how about I treat you to dinner one night? Bring your family if they're around." Keanu made a pleasant, sincere sound when speaking to a diner, but neither of them knew it. The incident the bellhop had previously stated wasn't just a PR blip. Rather, it was a police case involving a young maid who had worked at the Magnolia. Andrew Calhoun wasn't as invincible as he seemed. Her abrupt disappearance had been the subject of grand rumors for weeks, but nothing solid had come to light. As Keanu and Earl emerged from the restroom, their conversation was cut short by the commotion of the lobby. Andrew stood across the room, flanked by 2 reporters. Andrew had managed to keep everything quiet by using his wealth and connections, but in his conceit he had overlooked one crucial flaw. He hadn't completely erased the evidence. "Mr. Calhoun, do you have any comments regarding the accusations against the hotel? Have the authorities questioned you directly? What about the claims of maltreatment from former staff members?" His glossy smile concealed a growing dread as queries were directed at him. Earl halted and narrowed his eyes, whispering, "What's going on?" "You believe it has something to do with Andrew because," Keanu looked at him. As Earl returned to his small Bronx apartment that evening, he couldn't get rid of the feeling that something darker was going on. Memories from years ago started to resurface, stories whispered by late-night cleaning crews about missing paychecks, threats, and people who quit suddenly without saying goodbye, and his phone buzzed, interrupting his thoughts. Earl's lips pressed into a thin line. That man's been hiding skeletons for years, just didn't think one of them might actually show up. His oldest daughter, Marcia, texted him, "Did you read the news that Magnolia Grand is being investigated? Take caution." Earl gazed at the text. He didn't know why, but something told him that he was about to be enmeshed in something much greater than himself, and his heart was sinking. Keanu, meanwhile, was going through his phone while sitting in his hotel suite. When an article about the missing maid at the Magnolia Grand appeared on his screen, he scowled as the details began to come together in his mind. The following morning, Earl arrived at the Magnolia Grand earlier than usual. The hotel lobby was unusually quiet, but there was a sense of attention as he made his way to the janitor's closet. His hands trembled as he set down his cleaning supplies, and he noticed police officers talking to several staff members near the reception desk. At the same time, Keanu Reeves entered the hotel undetected, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses. Since he wasn't a guest today, He decided to confront Andrew Calhoun directly after reading the articles and learning more about the missing maid story. In the executive office, Keanu discovered Andrew yelling at his assistant. When Andrew saw Keanu, his look changed from one of annoyance to one of perplexity. "What the devil are you doing here?" Keanu shut the door behind him after Andrew yelled at him. "Since I am aware of what you have done, I am here." Although there was a worried undertone to Andrew's laughter, "You have no idea who you're dealing with, have you?" Keanu moved closer, speaking in a cool yet detached tone. "Your money won't cover everything this time." Andrew's face became red. "You don't know a damn thing," he said, slamming his fist on the desk. "The missing maid, the threats, the way you treat people, all of this is going to catch up with you." Andrew's composure broke and fear briefly flashed in his eyes as Keanu retorted, "I've already spoken to some of your former staff and Earl, and he's told me enough to know you've been exploiting your employees for decades. If you've hurt anyone, Andrew, I'll make sure the world knows." Before he could reply, there was a knock on the door. As the police escorted Andrew out of his office in handcuffs, the lobby erupted in whispers and gasps. "Mr. Calhoun," a stern voice said, "it's the police. We need to speak with you." The police had discovered surveillance footage from the hotel basement that implicated Andrew in the maid's disappearance. The footage showed him entering the basement with the maid late one night but leaving alone hours later. Early, who had been called in to clean the area the following morning, recalled being told to avoid the basement that day. Earl nodded, realizing that Keanu's presence had been crucial in revealing the truth in the weeks that followed the Magnolia Grand Hotel's dramatic makeover. Keanu stood silently with his eyes meeting Earl's across the room. Following Andrew's arrest, the hotel's operations were thoroughly investigated, and Earl was asked to testify regarding the years of abuse and cover-ups he had seen. Throughout the ordeal, Keanu stuck by Earl's side, attending court proceedings and even publicly discussing the case. Earl's quiet dignity and fortitude inspired many, and one evening after the trial was over and Andrew was sentenced, his story became a symbol of strength in the face of injustice. As Earl and his family joked and told stories over hamburgers and fries, Keanu invited them to supper at the diner Earl had selected. In an emotionally charged speech, Earl's eldest daughter lifted her glass to her father and to Keanu, who serves as a reminder that good deeds are still possible. "I never thought I'd see the day when the truth would come out," Earl said quietly, "but it's here and it's because people cared enough to fight for it." Earl's eyes welled with tears as he looked around the table at his children, grandchildren, and the man who had seen his value when others hadn't. Keanu put a hand on Earl's shoulder and grinned, saying, "You deserved better. Oh, you'll have it now." Although Earl's story was one of heartbreak and hardship, it ended with hope and a reminder that even in the most difficult circumstances, humanity and justice can shine through. Earl retired soon after the trial, finally being able to enjoy his golden years with his family. The Magnolia Grand under new management established scholarships in Earl's name for underprivileged workers and their families. Keanu subsequently moved away from New York to pursue his career, but he and Earl remained in contact. Their bond, which was formed under the most unlikely of circumstances, is proof of the strength of empathy and the guts to stand up for what's right.